But let's begin with that big debate, fiery in the way the first night so pointedly wasn't, and exposing ideological fissures, as well as some candidate weaknesses that will begin to reshape the race. It was also a very dramatic show of diversity. 3 women on that stage, including an African-American, an openly gay candidate, an Asian American, and the candidates ranging in age from 37 to 77.
We have to make continuing education available for everyone so that everyone can compete in the 21st century. We're not doing that now.
Senator Sanders.
As the youngest guy on the stage, I feel like I probably ought to contribute to the generational conversation.
As part of Joe's generation.
I'm all for
part of Joe's generation. Let me respond.
Before we move on
the issue, if I may say, is not generational.
Please.
Yeah.
The Senator issue is not generational. The issue is who has the guts to take on Wall Street, to take on the fossil fuel industry.
These issues
Senator Harris, I'm so sorry. We will let all of you speak. Senator Harris. Senator Harris. Please, we will let you all speak. Senator Harris.
We can't afford to wait for evolution on these issues.
Hey, guys, you know what? America does not want to witness a food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table. Yes?
Everybody wanted to talk because the stakes were so darn high. Well, this was expected to be a face-off between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, those two guys. A battle between progressives and moderates about health care, the economy, and, of course, defeating Donald Trump. But Senator Kamala Harris had other ideas, taking on Biden on the issue of race in an exchange that everyone is talking about today.
And as the only black person on this stage, I would like to speak on the issue of race. I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of 2 United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the 2nd class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
It's a mischaracterization of my position across the board. I did not praise racist. That is not true, number one. Number two, if we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that. I was a public defender. I didn't become a prosecutor.
MSNBC's Garrett Haake was in that hall last night. So, Garrett, look, a lot of experts in debate prep will argue the toughest place to be at the start of any debate night is being the front runner. Kamala Harris definitely helped to prove that point last night. Look, you spoke with Joe Biden immediately after the debate ended. What did he have to say, and what are folks thinking this morning?
Yeah, Chris, look, I think Joe Biden knew he was going to come into this as the frontrunner with a target on his back. His campaign was prepared for the possibility that he would have to relitigate elements of his past. They were hoping to keep this a forward-looking debate as much as possible, with a focus on Donald Trump and with a focus on Biden's policies now in 2019, not his record back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And I think you could hear some of the frustration in his voice when I talked to him on stage immediately after the debate ended. Take a listen.
Is it frustrating to you in the year 2019 to be relitigating these debates at this point?
It should be about the future. It should be about what we're going to do to deal with institutional racism.
As for Harris, this was obviously a calculated moment on her part. Some of her advisors were among those telling me before the debate started that they knew the candidates were going to have to make their own moments. They couldn't count on the moderators to force these candidates to shake it up, and it would be up to the candidates themselves to make the points they wanted to make. I think you saw Harris build some confidence over the course of the debate to get to that moment. It wasn't like Eric Swalwell sort of taking a swing at Joe Biden in the first 20 minutes of the debate that we saw. It was a candidate who got more and more of the crowd behind her, built up her own story, and then took that opportunity when it presented itself.
Garrett Haake, thank you so much for your reporting throughout. I want to bring in Phillippe Reines, who is the former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton, Washington Post opinion writer, and MSNBC political analyst Jennifer Rubin. And with me here, Jason Johnson, politics editor at The Root, as well as an MSNBC contributor. So, Phillippe, I want to start with you because you've been in that position that Joe Biden was in, somebody who was working with the front runner. I don't know. I think you can make an argument for that exchange on race being the most important exchange of the night on a couple of levels. One, this is an issue that Democrats have to talk about and that it most directly affects their most loyal constituency. Secondly, I think it also brings up a real issue here, which is the generational divide that you saw and you heard talked about. What's your take on what you saw last night?
I'm with you, Chris. I'm not going to make the argument that it wasn't. You know, particularly look at the politics of the Democratic primary. You're talking about a very big impact of African Americans throughout. So you're not going to do well without them. The question is whether or not Joe Biden lost any support last night. Ironically, we're all focusing on how Kamala Harris actually dominated, both taking control of the stage in general, both speaking on behalf of the all 10 in terms of her food fight comment. But not only did she put on a clinic in terms of talking to Joe Biden, she actually made the best defense for Joe Biden that Joe Biden didn't make for himself, which is her first words. I know you're not a racist. And somehow Joe Biden, Kamala clearly came into last night having very much planned and thought about that moment. It was odd to see Joe Biden as if it was a question out of the blue. He did not do himself any good. Yeah, the word that comes to mind when you watched her last night was preparation, man. She came ready for every single thing. She had her lines ready. She had her defenses ready. She had her attacks ready. And, Jason, the other thing about that is that you saw after the exchange that they had on busing. I mean, who thought that in 2019 we'd be talking about busing? Her campaign tweets out, just like that, there was a little girl in California who was bused to school. That little girl was me. And there's the photo. Your take on the night.
Well, look, I think Senator Harris did a really, really good job. But I hate to throw water on everybody's Yas Queen moments and everything else like that. Did anybody vote today? No. No one's going to vote for 8 months. So as much as she did well in her performance last night, I can bet you that Joe Biden will still be in the lead come Monday.
I think most people would agree with that,
most people,
for sure.
I think, but people have to remember that these performances are also introductions. What Senator Harris really accomplished last night is for anybody out there who thought, I don't know if she's tough enough to go against Donald Trump, that's what she showed. And that's it.
But don't you think that is the one thing? Look at the polls. The polls say what Democratic voters want more than anything else is somebody who can beat Donald Trump. What she showed last night is what every person who has ever done debate prep said to me in advance of this debate, which is you have to show you can not just stand on that stage with Donald Trump, but you can beat him.
I don't think there's ever been any doubt. In my mind, she's a prosecutor. She's smarter than him. Donald Trump went the last 15 minutes.
But for most of Americans, they didn't know that.
But for most of Americans, they're not paying attention to these debates. They're picking up the pieces that are coming down afterwards. That's why I'm saying we have to recognize that this is just step one for Senator Harris. Hillary Clinton beat Barack Obama in every single one of those early debates and still ended up losing in Iowa. So what Harris demonstrated, yes, I can go head-to-head with Donald Trump. Yes, I'm not a racist. Yes, I can dominate an entire debate. She's got to do it several more times. She's got to build her field on the ground. So I don't think that it wasn't a great performance. I just think we can't make too much of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's saying suddenly tomorrow a new poll's going to come out and she's beating Joe Biden. But if you're looking for who had a breakout moment, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And then Lester Holt asked the candidates to raise their hands. I know there's a lot of controversy over the raise the hands thing. I think it tells us some things. Answering a question about health care. Take a look.
Many people watching at home have health insurance of their employer. Who here would abolish their private health insurance in favor of a government-run plan? All right.
So you saw the hand up by Kamala Harris, but then she sort of clarified that response this morning on Morning Joe.
Do you believe that private insurance should be eliminated in this country?
No.
You don't?
No, I do not.
But you raised your hand last night.
But the question was, would you give up your private insurance for that option? And I said yes.
Oh, I think you heard it differently than others then.
Probably.
This, Jennifer, is an issue with a clear dividing line. Medicare for all, no Medicare for all. Should private insurance continue? Something that, by the way, is very popular with the vast majority of people who actually have private insurance. So on an issue standpoint, I wonder what your take was.
Well, first of all, this has been a problem in the past, and I think it's still a problem for Senator Harris, which we don't really know whether she's gone the full Bernie, Elizabeth Warren route, which is absolutely, for all intents and purposes, except for cosmetic surgery or a supplemental plan, you're not going to have a choice. You're going to be on Medicare. I think that's where she's headed, but I'm not sure. And she's been able to kind of skate through this. Listen, I think this is a terrible mistake for Democrats. When people out there hear Medicaid for all or Medicare for all, they say, great, that sounds wonderful. I know Medicare, that's great. And then when they hear that they're going to lose their current private insurance, some of which, if you're a union member, is very, very generous, they say, wait a second, I'm not sure I want to get into that. So for the minimal benefit you get in reassuring the left in the Democratic Party, you risk alienating a whole segment of America and, worse, playing into this socialism theme that Donald Trump has come up with. I don't agree with this notion that whatever you say, he's going to say socialist. There's sometimes when you lead with your chin and you give him an opening, and I fear for the Democrats that this may be one of them. Ironically, the other raise your hand moment, which I think is equally, if not more so troublesome, was when they asked if they would cover illegal immigrants. And Donald Trump is going to go to town with that.
He immediately tweeted about it and made the point that, look, you know, should we be doing this stuff at home first? He called it the end of the race. Look, Phillippe, this is nothing new, right? The problem every party faces. If you're a Republican candidate, you run in the primary to the right, and then you have to moderate. So now you're running on the left, and you have to try to moderate. But let me read to you from David Brooks' column this morning. I could never in a million years vote for Donald Trump. So my question to Democrats is, will there be a candidate I can vote for? If Democrats run a populist campaign against the business elite, Trump will run a broader populist campaign against the entire educated elite. His populism is more compelling to people who respond to such things. Right now, we've got two parties trying to make moderates homeless. Do you think that debate last night helped Donald Trump, Phillippe?
I don't. I'll tell you why. Because on the whole, the last two nights have shown that among the 20 people, there are a number of them that will make great nominees and that can beat him. On his specific tweet, I agree with Jennifer by and large. But if he wants to fight over who treats people better, who wants to provide health care, who wants to provide middle-income class tax cuts, then bring it on. And not to go after Jason, but, you know, I agree that this wasn't everything last night, but it wasn't nothing. People can't vote today, but they can vote with their checkbook. The end of the second quarter is 2 days from now. And a week from now, the only thing that's going to have endured from 15 million people having seen it is that Kamala Harris beat Joe Biden, and 18 other people didn't get anything done.
And let's not undersell the importance of 2 days from now, because we're going to have a new set of standards for the September debate. I want to do one more thing here. And Jennifer, the person that I think is getting lost a lot in this is Bernie Sanders. Let's not forget that he also is one of the front runners. And last night, Rachel Maddow fact-checked Bernie Sanders with Bernie Sanders. Take a listen.
Senator Sanders, a Vermont newspaper recently released portions of an interview you gave in 2013 in which you said, quote, my own view on guns is everything being equal, states should make those decisions.
No.
Has your thinking changed since then? Do you now think there's a federal role to play?
That's a mischaracterization of my thinking.
It's a
Look,
quote of
we
you.
have a gun crisis right now.
Yeah, mischaracterization, that's a quote of yours. And then Senator Sanders was asked about age and the generational gap in the spin room afterwards, and here's what he said.
Look, I think if I were to say to a younger person, you know, you're not qualified because you're only 35 or 36 or something like that, you don't have the experience, that's not right. I don't think so. Judge people on the totality of who they are, what their ideas are, what their experience is, what their record is. That's what I think we should do.
I mean, the older candidates, Jennifer, often talk about experience, you know, or we can go back to the youth and inexperience quote from a previous campaign. Having said that, how much of an issue is it in this campaign?
I think the issue is, do you seem like you're in the contemporary world? And standing up there, he seemed like a socialist from the 1950s yelling at people in the same screechy voice, without smiling, without any kind of personal connection. And I think he kind of got lost in the shuffle. Other people have kind of taken those issues away from him, and he looked like the angry man in the center of the stage saying, "Get off my lawn." And I don't think that's a good look for the Democratic Party, particularly when they have this opportunity to go up against an addled president who is, I think, degenerating before our eyes. So I think if there was a loser who actually potentially has more problems in the long run than Joe Biden, it was Bernie Sanders.
Jennifer Rubin? Real quickly.
Sorry, if I could jump in, I would just say that there's a reason after last night, you can see why the Democratic Party has never elected a president older than 54.
Phillippe Reines, Jennifer Rubin, thanks to both of you. Jason, you're going to stick around. We're going to see you a little bit later on in this hour.